Welcome back to the Solar Power Hour. My name is David Ringo, your host for another episode. Follow us on Facebook at The Solar Power Hour, and you can check out our website at thesolarpowerhour.solar. And I had some people ask me, did I forget the .com? It's actually .solar. It's a new URL. So there's no .com or .org on the end. It's just thesolarpowerhour.solar. So last week we talked about quite a few things that would actually add cost to an installation, and the number one thing was talking about the type of roofs, and that's the first question we had this week. We had quite a few questions coming in about this last episode, and what I wanted to cover is, the first question is, show us how you actually attach to the roofs. So what I want to do is today we're going to try and make sense of all the mess I have on the table today, and we're going to talk about how we actually install on all these roofs. But again, I forgot to tell you what we're here for. We're here to educate you, put you in the driver's seat. We want to teach you everything you can know about solar before you have a solar rep or anybody come out and talk to you about solar, so you're actually in the driver's seat. We want to educate you. So today, like I said, we're going to answer some questions, and we're going to go right down through and show you how we actually install and how I've been doing it for a decade or so and how I've seen it done. There's other places in the country that install differently because of wind load and snow loads and all that kind of stuff, but you have to take in consideration what the engineers say you have to do in that area. Some places don't even require a permit, which is mind-boggling. So the simplest thing to do is we're going to start with how we attach to a shingle roof. That's the most common application in the U.S. This looks more like a shingle than anything we have up here. So let's do this. Let's say this is a shingle line, and I'm going to be at the top of the roof looking down, so you're actually downstream from the ridge. And this is a flashing that we use. And to be honest with you, for years, solar's been installed without flashings. And this technology is coming along quite a ways, and all the technology, the sealants they use, the materials they use on these flashings have come along so drastically. It's unbelievable. I've seen small improvements all along the way, and it's actually kind of cool how they do this now. But there's so many things like on this flashing here, and I'm trying not to show a certain brand, but if you look at these flashings, they actually have notches on either side. So you can see a notch on either side and one right here on the bottom. And so what they do on these notches, and the reason they're on here, is to follow a chalk line. It sounds crazy, but when you look at a roof, a lot of times shingles are not straight across a roof. So if we were to go through and put all these and put a lag here, this holds the L foot, and I should have one here. Bear with me. If I put an L foot there, and we just followed the shingle line, and I put a bunch of L feet like this, and now it's a pretty rigid. I anchor that with a 4-inch stainless steel lag, right? I'll spin it so you can see the hole here. So we put a lag here. If I were to do this by the shingle line and keep this right off the shingle line here, we may have all kinds of curves and so on through here, especially if it's a long run. The problem I have with that is if we're going to mount a rail on top of that, you have a very rigid aluminum rail that doesn't exactly flex. So if we followed the shingle line with this and it's all up and down all over the place, and we try and put a rigid solid piece of aluminum on that, it doesn't match up very well. So what we do is, we're just going to go back to the notches on these flashings. These notches will line up with a chalk line. So we'll put a chalk line across there. Usually they're pretty close. But let's so what we'll do is we'll have a chalk line that they've decided to use, and it's a straight line, and then they measure down, and they know how far, the installers will know how far they got to go down for the next rail. So this being a shingle, even though it's not really a shingle, we would slide this up underneath the shingle above it, and then we would put, there's some sealant that goes underneath of it, and then you put the L foot on top of that. This is a certain brand that, one of the brands that we use, and then from there, you're going to put this 4-inch lag that goes right into your rafters. So a lot of people ask me, are these things secure onto a roof? And I'm going to tell you, you put this lag, and usually, not always, but roughly about 1.75 of these will go in per module. So if you have 4 modules, just do the math, 20 modules, let's just do 10. You're going to have about 18 of these feet in anyway, in the roof. So this is very secure. So what they do is they'll put a little bit of sealant underneath, because there is going to be a hole that goes in the roof, but this flashing, you can see the hole underneath, but the flashing is going to go underneath the shingle above. So what happens when it rains, that's the concern we're having, right? We want to keep the water out of the penetration. The water comes off this shingle, hits this flashing, and goes down and goes right over to the next shingle and continues to go down the roof. So it literally makes it to where there's no leaks at all. Now, a couple things about this, well, quite a bit. sorry about that. Most people, years ago, the technology was to put an L-foot down, put some gliss around it, which is what we call in the industry sealant. So it'd seal around this, stick this on the roof. We got to have a hole here. They put that lag right in the hole like that. So now, what they did was, they literally put this here with no flashing. So what happens is the water is hitting the back of this. So let me put it to you like this. So if the water's coming down the roof like this and hitting this, sooner or later that water's going to win. It's going to go against this. It's going to go underneath here. It's going to hit something in here. The sealant is going to either expand and contract from heat and thaw and all that kind of stuff. So the weather is going to win at this point sooner or later. So when you are having somebody install just standard L feet on your roof, which is fine, which is a very common practice, make certain that they're using flashings. I've gone around to home shows in our area, and I love the responses I get from different companies and different contractors. I'll say, why is it your price is so much cheaper than the other, the other people? And I just talked to them. They have no idea who I am. And I love the one comment I got from somebody not long ago, probably about 2 years ago now. He says, I don't know why we're so much cheaper, but you should buy from us. And I started asking him, and all of a sudden I asked him how they mount to the roof, and they said they just put an L-foot up there. And I said, well, do you put flashings up? And he says, oh no, that's a lot extra money. If you want to pay for that, we'd probably be right at where everybody else is. Well, everybody else is quoting me the flashings. This is a standard installation, and it's a very, very common thing to see on a roof is these. Now, like I said, there's technology built into these things. You wouldn't think there's a lot of technology on a piece of flashing, a piece of aluminum. But like I said, years ago, they didn't have these little notches. So you can have chalk lines going straight up. So you want to hit the rafter, right? So this will be marking the rafter. So you can actually put this underneath that shingle above, line this up with that chalk line. You can do the same thing with the sides. Now you know you're going to hit the rafter, and you're going to hit it right here because you've located it prior to doing that. So this all being on just a shingle roof, and we'll get into some other stuff here in a minute. Now, some of the other things we can talk about is this flashing in particular. I really like this one a lot. There's all kinds of them out there with different options, but this one has, it's forged into this piece of metal. So you see a 3/4 inch riser here. So what has to happen for this one to leak, and this is why I really enjoy using this one. It makes, we sleep pretty well at night knowing this isn't going to leak. When you have a 3/4 inch riser, and then you put this on here, and then the lag that we're using has a rubber gasket on top of it. You put this in here and tighten that down. That water, you have to have almost a 1 inch standing water on that roof. And if it's a roof that's tilted 26 degrees like the average roof is in the country, if it's tilted like so and you got 1 inch of water, you'd have to have a monsoon hitting you to come an inch over and then get past this rubber grommet. We've never had one of these leak. We've installed these for I don't know how long. It's been well over a year or 2 years maybe. Never had any issues with these leaking. This manufacturer themselves has probably close to 15 million of these in operation throughout the country, throughout the world. Have never had a leak that's because of their product. So their product is pretty neat, and it has, just with that riser, it's a wonderful little addition that has helped make that thing absolutely waterproof. They have some wonderful videos online about that. But that's just the shingle flashings. It's a very cool thing. Now, a couple of things about these. So you can get them in, this is called the mill finish. So mill finish versus a dark flashing. I don't have the dark one here, but you can imagine what the dark looks like. It's actually, let me just lay this panel next to it. So this frame here is what you would call a dark finish module. So behind me, I don't know if you guys can zoom out for me real quick. You got two different color frames on this. This being the mill finish, so you can see it looks like an aluminum finish. Well, this is also aluminum, but it's just painted, right? So you have a dark finish and a mill finish. So when I refer to those two terms, that's what I'm talking about. So you actually have probably the most common flashing is a mill finish, and then you can also have a dark finish flashing. But to be honest with you, I don't see really a sense of using a darker flashing unless it's something that's going to be highly visible, unless it's back by your pool area, something you're really going to see. You're not going to see the aluminum, the mill finish, and it's not really worth the upgrade because it's quite a bit more cost to get this painted and then to have this bronze, because keep in mind this is all up underneath your array. So you have your L-foot goes on top of here, and then from there you've got rail that goes on that, and then you've got inverters if you have microinverters. If not, you just have wiring and so on, and then you have your modules. It's very hard to see these underneath your array. So to be honest with you, mill finish for me, putting on my house, we're going to use mill finish. I don't see the sense of using the darker color. So now that's how we go into just straight up shingle, but finding the rafters is always an interesting chore. There's devices out there to help you find the rafters, but many installers use the same standard technique, and they literally will find it via sound of hitting it with some kind of a rubber mallet or something like that. You can feel it. Some roofs you go up and you can see a little bit of a bow in it because you can see the MSB board or the plywood is bowed down a little bit, so you can almost see where the rafters are, and so on. Now, the one we were talking before I started the show here, some guys were asking me about how heavy is the solar system and how, should I be concerned about putting this weight on my roof? And I love that question because I've had a lot of people tell me they don't want to put it on the roof because it's too heavy. Modules, these modules behind me, standard size, is probably about 40 pounds a piece. So let's just say you put 20 modules up and you got 800 pounds and then, rail and all that kind of stuff. To put an actual solar system on your roof is less than putting a second layer of shingles on, which is a common practice in the industry. If you have shingles that are end of life, some roofers in the country will go through and put another layer of shingle, and then after that you can't put a third, but you can put 2 layers of shingles on. Very common practice, so that actually weighs more than putting solar on your roof. So your solar actually adds structural value or structural integrity because you're putting a framing on there that makes it strong both vertically and horizontally, and it doesn't add as much weight as most people think. So actually walking on a roof, if you think about it, my footprint is, say I have a square foot and I'm 200 pounds, I'm 200 pounds per square foot. Modules are 40 feet or 40 pounds and they're 18 square feet, so they're less than 2 pounds a square foot. Throw in the rail, say we're 5 pounds per square foot by the time you get it all spread out through the roof. It's a very light addition to your roof, and then on top of that it's bolted down with these lags. Like I said, these are 4-inch stainless steel lags that go into your roof and they go right into your rafter. You're not going to see these move. So a lot of people worried about the weight, and a lot of people worried about the wind. There's things you got to worry about. You got to worry about the snow load. The snow is when you get a heavy snow on your house, it's very heavy. But again, your roof is built for that. But some of these structures, you have to put more L feet underneath of these just to support the heavy weight of snow and so on. Same thing with wind. When you start getting heavy, very high wind load ratings. So Dade County is probably the strongest wind that I know of in the country. There's other places along the coast, Texas, Louisiana, all those places have strong wind potential. So they have higher regulations on how many L feet you have to put in. So how they attain that is they put more per feet. You only have so many rafters that are either 18 or 24 inches apart. Sometimes they span them 6 feet apart and you're okay. Like in the middle of the array, you might be 6, 8, 10 feet apart before you have to put more in. But down towards the lower levels and the corners, you're putting more because those are the parts where the wind is more susceptible to grab those modules and rip them up. So the bottom row is usually about 2 feet. Sometimes they're 4 feet apart. You'll have those L feet with a 4-inch lag every 2 to 4 feet. So that's how a shingle application goes, and like I said, they're very light, they're very easy. This is the easiest thing to do. They'll get up on the roof, and literally they'll make it to where they can slide that up underneath the next shingle above it. So a couple things that we run into as installers doing jobs at somebody's homes, some things that frustrate the homeowner is if it rains at all, I won't let my installers continue the installation if they haven't got these flashings down. And I hope some of my future clients are watching this so they can understand what we're talking about. Let's just paint the scenario that it's raining today, and it's raining down the shingle all the way down through your roof. Your roof is saturated, and the customer wants us to complete the installation. So to do so, what we do is around this hole, we put a full circle of sealant around it. It's not totally necessary. Actually, some manufacturers just say put a U shape around it. We actually put a full bead around it. So that bead is not going to set, and it's not going to adhere to something that's wet. So if they don't have these flashings down, I don't let my installers move forward. They will not be able to do that and set this down because now you're sitting on a wet surface. It's just not going to seat. So I'm not a big fan of that. So what we do is we typically, if these are down and actually attached, so now we have the lags are in this thing and they're set I'm missing the hole totally, but if you have this set in the roof and you got your L feet and your lags are in there, that's one thing, because now this is waterproof. As soon as you install that, I'm fine with let's continue. Even after the rain, I don't let my guys stay on the roof because of lightning potentials in our area and so on. But if this is mounted, it's good to go. Let's proceed after the rain stops, get our equipment off the roof, and then go back up there when it stops. Sometimes we have a half-hour rain, and then it's gone. So after that, we'll go back up and finish the installation. But yeah, from an inspector for us, we can't proceed if the roof is wet. We just don't do it. So if it rains early in the morning, so there's times we'll call the entire day off, and it frustrates our guys. But we try and get that done. So anyway, we'll come back and we'll talk about how we install on tile and some metal. I think we have some flat roof materials here. So we'll come back here in a few minutes and talk about some other applications. But thanks for joining us on the Solar Power Hour. We'll be right back.
All right, this week we're going to talk about something exciting as usual.
We always have something exciting.
Yes, we do.
At least it's exciting to us.
But this is a question that comes up.
TV, hey, it is Friday night. We're not here. Yes, we pre-recorded once again because WeBeam TV is working over in Tampa with Dancing with the Stars.
62, who knew? I almost said Professional Mortgage Alliance, Joe's Bar and Grill. But actually, it's our 39th week. 62, who knew?
We're at the wonderful steampunk event at the Verizon Event Center here in 2019. I think it's still August, right? Yeah. Woo! Can't remember. I still turning about flooring law.
Yes.
To be able to help businesses to do that part of it. But it's just been a couple of years.
Well, and I've taken the business card files from our business cards.
Entrepreneurs and professionals of Tampa Bay, welcome to your hour for getting the information, the tools, and the connections
Ian
for
Beckles on Radio Influence.
Or you say left hand white, and then they catch the left hand white. What it does, it helps you quick with hand-eye coordination. Yeah.
Well, that's kind
as your super connector. We want to introduce you to our 50-plus show partners. We got over 80 categories of expert contributor advice here on the Consumer Quarterback Show, and we want to.
That's where we disagree, but that's okay.
I said nonviolent.
That's okay.
Because, you know, we're one of the only states that don't give them back the right. We've got Jamie Limbaugh. He is from the Next Step Image. I love that name because you were telling me earlier.
For the type of republic we actually are is actually very correct. Yet politicians and regular people use these words interchangeably, even though technically they are very different.
If you're an overdoer, overachiever, people pleaser, we tend to neglect ourselves. And even as Sisters Connected here, you know, with Women Unscripted, I know.
Welcome back to the Solar Power Hour. My name is David Ringo. I'll be your host. Follow us on Facebook at the Solar Power Hour or find us on our website at thesolarpowerhour.solar. Our phone number also, if you have any questions you want to call us about, 888-337-0937. Again, that's 888-337-0937. We were just talking about shingles and how to mount solar on a shingle roof. And I had one question, and then we're going to talk about tile, metal, those kind of different applications as well. But I had another question. Somebody says, how do you send the wiring into the house if you don't take it over the raft or over the gutter like some companies do? That's a great question. I have one product I want to show you here, and like I try and just want to show you different options, but like I'm going to use this as a shingle again, and I'm going to face it towards you. So here's what a shingle would look like. This is another thing. So this is just like a flashing. So let's just use this as a flashing on a shingle. This would slide up underneath there just like that. And then inside of this box, they've really designed this pretty well. They have it to where there's a couple gasketed fasteners here. Again, what you do is you put the sealant around the back, and then on this one they come with a little bit of a riser that would actually fit down in if there was a hole there, we'd be able to put that down into the attic, and then your wiring goes right in here. And then they make the connections and wiring, and they can drill into to the bottom, so it'd be downhill from the rain actually. And this is how you would put those. This is how you put wiring into the house. What we like to do. What I like to see done is I like to see these used for every array if possible. There are homes that you're going to run into that have high ceilings, that have no attic space, and or sometimes metal roofs and so on that don't want to make penetrations on. They might void a warranty. They might be paranoid about a warranty that may or may not be void. So we got to respect what the consumer wants us to do. But what I like to see, just because I'm in the industry for a while, I like to see a much cleaner install. They're much more exciting for me to see something clean on a roof with no conduit, because sooner or later conduit's going to break down. The wiring inside of it's going to break down if it's in the sun. Panels are made to be in the sun, so what we like to see on an install is just the modules, and I'll show you how to get rid of rail sticking out in the end later, or why you should ask if you're going to be buying solar, why you should ask them to make certain that happens. But this is how we go through and get wiring into a house without making it going down a conduit all over the roof. So we have a house that we were just at this last weekend, and they said they wanted to install just like their neighbor's house, and I looked over the neighbor's house. Beautiful install. So they had what was like this. It was a very black module. A whole array was black like so it looked beautiful. And the whole thing was great until you look around and you started seeing there was just conduit everywhere, and they insulated the conduit with something. I don't know why they would do that, but it was a lot of insulated conduit over the roof. It was thick. It was 1.5 inches, and it looked pretty horrible. And it was a pretty new install, so I don't understand. That's a new technology that I haven't seen, but not something that was pretty. We wouldn't do that. I wouldn't recommend having somebody do that. I would actually, for me, I would rather see another penetration in the roof that's professionally done like this, that can show, and this is just one of the options out there. There's 3 or 4 kinds like this out there. Very efficient, guaranteed not to leak. I would go with something like this versus putting conduit all over my roof and then making one penetration. Do one of these per array and hide them. It just looks so much better when you can't see the conduit. In addition to, not only is it cosmetically, does it look better, I'm convinced that the conduit and the wiring and all that stuff is going to last longer too, because anything in the sun, it doesn't matter if you're in southwest, southeast, or where you're at. Especially, let's just say we're up in the northeast and you have a lot of snow that's built up behind your wire and conduit. It's gonna put a lot of weight on that, especially pulling down the roof. If you have a steep roof, that's gonna put a lot of strain on that conduit. If it's not supported properly, you're gonna be pulling wires out of something somewhere. So I just personally prefer going through a roof and doing it that way. So these are great options. There's several different manufacturers of these out there. This is the kind that we use. I like this a lot. So that's how you put wire through the roof on a shingle house or shingle roof, and we talked about the flashings on how that works. So somebody asked me, let's talk about all the different roof lines. So let's talk about, let's do a flat roof next. So if you have a flat rolled or a flat composite roof, how do you mount on that? This is the best option that I have run into. There's many of them out there. So there's many things like this that we call them in the industry. There's all kinds of different names for them: pucks, mounts, O-mounts, round mounts. There's all kinds of really high-tech names that you can see we're pretty creative in the solar industry with names. So let's put this on a flat roof. Say this is the actual roof here, and this is all composite, or this is all asphalt rolled, or it's some kind of a TPO roof. TPO is somewhat common on flat roofs in our area. So what we've done here is we put this down. You've got 4 lags here, and on the bottom of this, you can see where you can put a hex head bolt in here, and I do not have that bolt with me, but it sticks up, and then what it does is it allows this is a threaded, what they call a riser, so you can have, this is one of the shorter ones I could find just for demos today. I didn't need a really tall one. So this would fit right in here, and then that bolt that is down here now, I would screw that right in here. This takes the 4 lags like I had a minute ago, those 4-inch lags, or other, depends on the manufacturer, they might have different ones. So this is going to have 4 lags in it, but before you do that, you put a little sealant around it, put a little sealant around these holes, put it around the outside, set this down, put your 4 lags in it, This is now mounted to the roof securely with that bolt sticking up. Don't forget to put the bolt in the bottom. Now we thread this in here. So now, does this make this watertight and waterproof? No, it doesn't. But what they do, this is what we call a curb. So what we do is there's two pieces to this. I happen to grab two different sizes, so I'm only going to show you this one today. But this is a curb that literally you can see is symmetrical. So this piece slides into this one, or you can just slide two of them together. They attach. On the bottom of this, you would put what we call glitch sealant, some kind of roof sealant on the bottom of this. You flip this over, you set this like this, and I'll show you the other side now. This is the part you need to see. When we have this mounted, this is secure now. So you are actually mounted to a rolled roof. This is a flat roof. This is not going anywhere, right? So now we do this. We put two of these together, and then there's an epoxy we fill this with. And inside that epoxy, it will fill it up to the top of this, so it's actually level with an epoxy. The water does not ever get past that. So we actually fill this up right here with epoxy. It is a flexible, rubberized kind of a compound that is perfect for any kind of thaw and expansion, any kind of freezing, any kind of expansion because of heat, anything like that. It can get wet. It can stay dry for months and years on end. It's very flexible, and it's approved for, I think they have a warranty on it for 20 to 25 years. So you can actually mount to a flat roof like so. I've also seen, and I don't have the actual pictures, I should have brought that, it's just now coming to me. We've done a lot of work with roofers, and what they will do is, if they're doing a rolled roof and they're doing a new one, so what we like to do is we'd like to mount on new roofs, right? So this customer had he had boxes installed on his roof. So they had 4x4 cleats put up. It was literally wooden 4x4 cleats, and then they built aluminum housing over top of it, and it was about 6 inches tall. And then from there, we mounted this and put this on top of it, and then put some sealant around it, and he had it to where it was raised off the roof. They already had it mounted. They had these boxes mounted that was off the ground, so it wasn't submerged. Some people get really freaked out about having something like this on a roof that they know holds water, because no flat roof is perfectly, it doesn't drain off there perfectly. So you got a lot of times we go on a roof to install on a flat roof, it's already holding water. Maybe there's a bow in the middle, it's hard to see, but water doesn't lie. It's going to be either sitting in the middle, maybe there's pockets somewhere where it sits, but you need to put these there. Again, this is one of those things, just like the shingles, when we mount on a shingle roof, you've got to make certain that this has to be dry for this to adhere. This doesn't have to be set up terribly long before it can get rained on, but you cannot be doing this in the rain. You can't set this in the rain. You can't seal this and set this down when it's wet, moist, or anything. We've gone places that was wet from the night before from the rain, and we've been there using leaf blowers trying to dry off these small sections, because 75% of the roof may be dry, but you got that one little pocket that always holds water. We'll do whatever we can. We'll do the work on the other portion of it. Wait for that to dry. Have the sun helping us out. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of a breeze. Working on that too. Put some leaf blowers on it. Do whatever we can. Sweep it off as much as you can. Get the standing water off, and then it will evaporate with the sun pretty quickly, and then we can go to work on installing the rest of it. But this is how you do it on a flat roof. So again, just a flat surface just like this. And there you go. You would have it just like that. But the epoxy is a gray. It looks just like this. You wouldn't even notice that this is filled up with anything. It just looks like a big chunk of metal. So it's that comes with a 20 to 25 year warranty, and these are very, very strong once they're attached to the roof. You cannot pull these off. Again, this is another engineered item. Obviously, this is technology that wasn't around years ago. This is pretty new to the market and very impressive. We've used this for quite a few times now, actually. Very impressed with that product. We've never had any problems with it. So again, we've got tile and metal roofs that we might run into. So I brought some pieces down here for, where did my outfit go? Here we go. So this is going to simulate a standing seam roof. If anybody knows what a standing seam roof is, it's where they put the panels. They're very flat in the middle, and then every about 18 to 24 inches, there's a piece that comes up like this, and it goes like this, and then it's literally crimped together, and the seal of that roof is about 3 inches off the roof. So how do we mount on that? There's a very common application that everybody in the industry uses. It's called an S5 clips, and I don't know if you can read that on there. It's pretty tough to see, but these S5 clips would sit here, and the beautiful part about S5 clips is this will mount without making any penetrations in the roof. So this would sit right on top of your metal panels right here, And then what happens is there's Allen keys, or there's Allen set screws right here that we can actually tighten into, grab onto the metal panel itself. So you set this like this, tighten that down, you tighten those screws down, this grabs it, and this does not move. The beautiful part about that is then it's threaded for a couple different screws. You put this on, you take these out, and you're putting, well, I use the L-foot as the example of what it would look like for a metal roof, but you take these off and you literally set the L-foot on there and screw these on there. So your L-foot would be sitting right on top of this. Set that right on top of here. This bolts down, and then you're off and running. So then from there, this sets right on top of that, top of that standing seam. You have no penetrations in your roof. So people ask me all the time, the best roof to install on? I don't know. I think it's funny, but I think the easiest one to install on is a metal roof. The issue with the metal roof is we start talking about how easy it is for the standing seam. It's very simple, very easy, no penetrations, but the problem is making the wires go through the roof then. I'm gonna sneeze. Maybe not. So these sit right on the roof. They're fantastic. You don't make no penetrations on them. Now the issue is afterwards, how do we make the wire go through? Because you don't have flashings to use like that flashing box that we used a minute ago. So typically on a metal roof, what we will do is there are times we can go over the ridge on those. That's probably the best thing to do because it's hard to make a penetration in a metal roof and make it not leak. There are many things out there. I didn't bring it with me today, but there's these little metal or little rubber boots that they put. They have an aluminum frame. You can screw those in with some adhesive behind them and then cut out and then have your conduit go down through that, and it fits it very tight and snug and it keeps it from leaking. You see that on a lot of applications in roofing. So any pipes that come through a roof, they use those boots. But we use them for the 3/4 or 1/2 inch piping, whichever we're going to put in the roof. We don't usually put it through the metal roof. Like I said, on the metal roof, we typically will find somewhere and conceal it as best we can and take it over the ridge and then just kind of conceal it and make it and hide it a little best we can. So I'm trying to think what else we can talk about here. What I want to talk about is when we come back, I want to talk about how we mount with the tile roofs, and we'll talk about the ground mounts and talk about what they look like and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about the rail and how to hide the ends of those. But for now, we're going to take another quick break. Thanks for joining us on the Solar Power Hour. We'll be right back.
All right, this week we're going to talk about something exciting as usual.
We always have something exciting.
Yes, we do.
At least it's exciting to us.
But this is a question that comes up.
TV, hey, it is Friday night. We're not here. Yes, we pre-recorded once again because WeBeam TV is working over in Tampa with Dancing with the Stars.
62, who knew? I almost said Professional Mortgage Alliance, Joe's Bar and Grill. But actually, it's our 39th week. 62, who knew?
We're at the wonderful steampunk event at the Verizon Event Center here in 2019. I think it's still August, right? Yeah. Woo! Can't remember.
Yes. To be able to help businesses to do that part of it. But it's just been a couple years.
Well, and I've taken the business card files from our business cards.
Entrepreneurs and professionals of Tampa Bay, welcome to your hour for getting the information, the tools, and the connections
Ian
for
Beckles on Radio Influence.
Or you say left hand white, and then they catch the left hand white. What it does, it helps you quick with hand-eye coordination. Yeah.
Well, that's kind
As your super connector, we want to introduce you to our 50+ show partners. We got over 80 categories of expert contributor advice here on the Consumer Quarterback Show, and we want to.
That's where we disagree, but that's okay.
I said nonviolent.
That's okay.
Because, you know, we're one of the only states that don't give them back the right. We've got Jamie Limbaugh. He is from the Next Step Image. I love that name because you were telling me earlier.
For the type of republic we actually are is actually very correct. Yet politicians and regular people use these words interchangeably, even though technically they are very different.
If you're an overdoer, overachiever, people pleaser, we tend to neglect ourselves. And even as Sisters Connected here, with Women Unscripted, I know
Welcome back to the Solar Power Hour. I'm your host, David Ringo. Call us anytime at 888-337-0937. Check us out on the Solar Power Hour on Facebook, or check us out on our website at thesolarpowerhour.solar. We were just talking about how we mounted to standard comp shingle roofs, and then we started talking a little bit about flat roofs, metal roofs. Now we're going to talk about tile. Tile roof being either concrete tile, clay tile. You hear in different parts of the country they're made of different products and so on. That's the most expensive, most laborious part of an installation. So when you are looking to get an installation, a solar install done, if you have a tile roof, expect that to be the most expensive installation. And if somebody's not charging you roughly 15 to 20 cents a watt extra, you're not getting a good install likely. I've seen many people take many shortcuts on these. There's all kinds of ways of doing it. It's a very expensive, time-consuming process. It really is. So people should be adding to cover that cost. So on a tile installation, there's a couple different ways of doing it. I'm going to tell you probably one of the most common ways of doing it. Not everybody does it this way. There are other ways of doing it. There's hooks, and there's ways of coring out the tile and leaving it intact. I'm going to show you a pretty common one where they actually pulled tiles out. I have some pictures of these I'll share with you in a minute. But this is a pretty common one that we've done on new construction and retro both, and it actually works very well. This is how we do it. I'm not saying this is the best way of doing it. There's other ways. But this is probably the one we're most used to doing, and it's the most common. So what we have is basically we have a mount here that is literally put in the place of where the tile would be. So you're going to go up and we're going to say, okay, this array has 12 modules on it, or whatever your modules are, and we pick out the feet and where they are. And we figure out that on this tile, underneath this tile is the rafter, and we need to take this tile out. So we'll remove it. Now, the complexity starts there, obviously. When you start removing tile, they could be installed in a way that they're real easy to pull off. They could be screwed down, they could be foamed down, they could be setting there. I've actually, in a house I used to live in, they were very loose. They were not foamed, and they were not screwed down, but they were nailed down, so they were real easy to move. So different parts in the country, they have different, if it's very steep, they're going to be put in there very, very well. If it's a fairly flat roof, and depending on parts of the country, it may not be installed as tough, and inspections are different throughout the country. And again, depending on your wind loads, snow loads, all that kind of stuff, pitch of the roof, those all come into play on how difficult, first of all, how to stand on the roof, and then secondly, how the tile should be staying on the roof. So you don't have tile on a very steep roof that's put in there just setting there. It's not going to stay. So on this installation, we're going to talk about tile replacement, and again, this is what we usually do. This is the one I like because I know it's not going to leak. Some of the others don't leak as well, but this is the one I'm used to. So we've removed a tile roof, and it's probably going to be about the size of, again, this notebook is my shingle demo and it's the tile demo, so it's about the same size. We pull the tile out. There's times that we have to pull the tile out above it to get the screws, to cut the screw heads off, to pull it out. It can be very time consuming. Typically what they do is they try not to break the tile that they're removing. If they're extremely difficult to get out, they may literally just say it's just as good to break the shingle or break the tile and take it out in pieces, chuck it out, let's get rid of it, let's trash it, because there's a whole tile replacement. I'm going to go over it and I'll show it to you in a second. So what this does is, you can see it's got two offset holes, and you'd be like, well, this is really strange. But what this allows us to do, so your hole is about 18 inches, 12 to 18 inches wide, depending on the tile. There's three different kinds. You have flat, S, and W tile is the most common. There's all kinds of different designs, but they have them all covered, but I just brought the most common ones today. So why these are offset is, let's just say the rafter goes right down the middle of the hole, so we can put this right here in the middle. the opening where your tile's gone. Put the 2 lags in here, and it's just the same things as we have before. You're putting these 2 lags in here, 4-inch lags, right into the rafter, so you know you're hitting a rafter. Again, this is going to be very, very secure. And then once they do that, they put the same T-bolt that we would put, and I keep looking for it and it's still not here, but if you would slide a T-bolt in here and then put this down here and tighten this down, and you can make this anywhere you want. So the beautiful part about this is the rafter. This could literally be almost tucked underneath the next tile over, and yet this is still going to be strong enough to where I can put this here. If this is in the center of the opening, great, then you're going to put this right in the middle. This is strong enough that it doesn't matter if it slides over here or whatever, but your T-bolt is sticking up out of here. This is tightened down to where you cannot tighten this anymore, so this is sitting here, right? So then, once that is done, these tile replacements, we're going to start off with, this is a pretty common one. This is, you have an S and a W tile is what they call these. This is the S tile, the W tile, again, us in the solar industry, we need somebody to help us name some things differently, but this is a W tile. Again, you can see it looks like a W, this is an S tile. Very scientific names. So this would go up underneath the tile above it. This comes down over the shaft like so, sits down right where the other tiles would be. This literally covers up the exact hole. Again, the cosmetics of this is not beautiful. This does not look terracotta. It doesn't come in a terracotta color. It doesn't come in a dark. This actually does come in a dark, but it's a lot more expensive. But again, there's a rubber boot that goes over top of this that keeps this dry as well. So this is how we do the tile roofs. Again, this isn't the only way of doing it. This is I wouldn't necessarily say this is the most common, but I feel just in my humble opinion, this is the best way of doing it. I know it's not going to leak. There's easier, cheaper, quicker ways of doing it. I just like seeing it done this way. Again, same thing with the W tile. It fits the same. Now, there's different size risers. This is a shorter riser, but you can see how that just barely fits through. But again, you just go ahead and put the tile or the L foot on here, and then you're off and running. So your L foot bolts on top of that. That's now mounted to your roof. It is not moving. This is setting up here. The one caveat, we had one complaint on this. I'm just transparent about this stuff. We had a complaint about somebody called us the other day with one of these on their installed on their roof, and they said they heard during some high winds. We had 40, 50 mile an hour winds the other day in our area, and they said they heard something that sounded like on the roof like it was jackhammering in some place. So we're still not 100% certain what that was, but we went back and what we did was we found that these actually will sit on the roof, and I mean you can see just like this. So you can imagine a small wind going across these. It's going to sound just exactly like that. So that's exactly what it sounded like on its tile roof. We went there, we couldn't simulate it, but what we did is we put a lot of sealant up underneath of that, so it's like a rubber sealant, and then after that, if it moves around, it sounded like this. There's no sound to it. So we're waiting for a 40 or 50 mile an hour wind in our neighborhood again to see if we solve the problem. But so I've had some people tell us that's exactly why they don't use these, because of the noise issue, because they don't sit down really tight. They sit with the tiles on top of them. This will sit underneath another tile. This sits underneath the tile, so it's weighted down. And then on top of that, you have the L foot. This is not going to go anywhere. It cannot go above this. It's not going to leave. And truly, the waterproofing, which I didn't talk about yet, this is honestly any tile roof. If you talk to a roofer or anybody that knows anything about roofing, the tile itself is cosmetic. That's not what keeps the water out of your roof. That's not the waterproofing portion of it. It's beautiful. It adds value. Actually, that's a one roof style that adds value to a home, I believe. I'm not a real estate agent, but I think that's fact. But the waterproofing actually happens here. So when we put this down, again, this is just a regular flashing. But this is the same manufacturer I talked about before that had the risers. So on these holes, if you look at that, this is a 3/4 inch to almost an inch riser. So you're putting that lag in here, and then you literally have to have an inch of water to be able to get down in these holes with these lags. Now, if I set this down on a flat roof and expected this to be waterproof with just these lags in here, that's not going to work because I've got water that can get up underneath here. So if this is the top of the roof coming down, you can see that water can easily get up underneath here. It doesn't take a lot of water to seep underneath there. So what we do is, on this one, we take, there's tape that we put around this. It's actually for roofing tape. You put the tape down and then you actually put tar over top top of that, on the top 3 edges, on the 2 sides, on the top edge actually. So this is all, if this is the top of the roof, you put sealant around these 3 edges, and when, manufacturers don't actually ask us to put sealant on the bottom because it's not needed, and honestly, you don't want to put something on here that will make a bridge to keep the water here. You want the bridge to make it to where the water will go around it. Again, not a lot of water gets inside and touches these. A lot of the water will stay on the tile, but again, the tile is cosmetic and so on. So that's actually how we install on the tile. Again, there's 2, 3 different kinds of there's flat tile replacements, there's all kinds of different replacements and so on. Actually, we have a couple pictures, if we can go to those, just to show you what the tile looks like. Some of the tile roofs, some that actually have been installed. So that is a tile roof. We actually have that one on our business card, I think. That's a beautiful install. You can see the dark modules there. That's on a tile roof. That's secure as can be. You can see that's right on the water, so that's a very high wind zone right there, and it's installed. Just that is not going anywhere. That's a very, very strong install, and you can see even installing on a tile roof, some people think it's going to be ugly. It depends on who you talk to. I'm kind of biased after all these years. I think solar's beautiful on a roof. I've had some people tell me they don't want to buy solar and put it on the roof because it looks stupid. My opinion, my smart aleck remark is I think it shows intellect. So. Again, a little bit biased on that. So we actually, I think we have some pictures of these replacements on the roof. Do we have some of those up there? They show some of the actually installs of these. You can see the galvanized finish on those. And on this picture, you can see that actually has, so on this one, you can see the rubber boot that I was mentioning I didn't bring with me, but you can see how that's set down in there. It's totally, why they call it a replacement, it actually replaces the tile and it goes right into the roof, so you can see how it's mounted. Looks just like, if it was different color, you wouldn't even notice it's there. So that's a W tile, fits right on the roof. You got the little rubber boot on the shaft that goes up through there, and then on top of that, you got the L-fit bolted in, you got the rail bolted onto that. And then again, on that picture, you can barely see it, but you can see above that another tile replacement, and that's the beginning of the next row of the rail, so it goes right up through there. So beautiful picture there, visual example, I should say. So I had somebody ask me, and we talked briefly about ground mounts last week, but somebody said, hey man, I got a lot of shade on my roof and I got a wonderful spot out in the yard. What are the options there? And that's a ground mount. And I know we have some pictures of that. If we can bring those up, I'll talk a little bit about those. But what that is literally, it's a structure you build out in your yard, and you can see this one here. This is 80 some panels. This is a very large system that we put in. Not typically do you see a ground mount system that large, but that's 80 some modules. And so the expense that you have to consider with a ground mount, that is an extremely expensive installation, because you're building the platform to put it on. If you put it on your roof, you already have the platform, you're just bolting to it, right? So this, we have to build and dig trenches and dig holes and put posts in the ground and put a substructure in and put the rail down. So typical pricing on this, I've priced this throughout the country recently, just asking other people what they charge for those. You're talking 60 cents a watt probably. So if you're buying a 10,000 watt system, you're probably talking about $6,000. I mean, that's a large upcharge for a installation on a ground mount. But here is actually part of that 85 panel install. So what we've done is we've got each string actually has a disconnect right there. So this shows the wiring and substructure. So you can see on there you have the posts that are going into the ground. Those are 3-inch galvanized steel posts, and then they're in the ground. On this project, they're actually in the ground, I believe, 6 feet, and concrete is that deep as well. So you have 6 feet in the ground of concrete with a 3-inch galvanized steel beam. And not just is the beam actually has rebar on the bottom. On the very bottom of it, it's got 2 pieces of rebar that's drilled right through the bottom of that, so it actually has something to grip. Because if you think about it, if that doesn't seat well, or if the concrete doesn't seat well around it, there's nothing really holding it. So it's got rebar on the bottom of that, and then the concrete's poured on top of that. So those posts are in the ground. You're not moving those. And then on top of that, you see there's a little base plate that's set on there, and then you've got 3-inch galvanized tubes on top of that. That's again part of the substructure. And then down farther away from you on this picture, you see some very short posts sticking out of the ground. Those are still 6 feet in the ground, and they're out of the ground maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet. I'm guessing. I can't remember the exact on this one. And what you have there is another row of 3-inch galvanized going the full length of that, and that's these panels are, there's a lot of them on there. So those, I can't remember how long this one was, but then on top of that, you've got all the wire management underneath there. You've got a giant combiner box, and then there's 6 strings on this one, and each one of them has to have a disconnect. So from there, all those strings are in a trench, and they go 300, on this job in particular, it was 320 foot-ish. I think it was 317 to be exact, but you're talking 320 feet. So that's an extremely long trench. And on top of that, you ask an electrician how long it takes to bury, or how much it takes to bury a cable, or you just want to add something to light in your yard, and it's 100 feet out. They're going to charge you $5, $6, $7. For us, we're usually around $7 a foot. I think that's the national average. Some places it's more. You got to consider if you're in the Northeast where it's all rocks, or Southwest where you just can't dig without hitting boulders. It's going to be a little bit pricier, right? Some places the soil is real easy to dig in. You fire up a ditch witch and you're there in 5 minutes. That's a different ballgame. Some places can be a lot more expensive, so you have to take that in consideration, especially if you're putting posts in the ground 6 feet. Where we did this one, it was a lot of sand, very easy. You go through an auger in the ground, boom, you got a hole. It's pretty simple. It's there. Then you're putting those tubes in there, and we use the concrete tubes, and then after that you put the posts in there. So that's a big difference. The main cost is, again, the structure. Those 3-inch galvanized steel posts are expensive. The long runs are expensive. You put all that together, then we're putting the racking on top of that. Just the added time for constructing all that stuff is probably, we had probably about 2.5 additional days on this one, and then we put the rail on there as well. It was a great project. We do like seeing these done, and we do like taking aerials once they're done. It's kind of unique projects, but man, those are expensive to do. So we talked about all the different types of roofs and all that kind of stuff. We were going to talk about sizing again this week. We didn't quite get there. We wanted to talk about that. So we talked about how heavy the systems are. We showed about how to send a wire, how to attach roofs. We talked about the space on my roof. That is the ground mount. So that ground mount system that we just showed you is pretty darn expensive. I think we have some pictures of metal roofs. I'd like to show those while we have a couple minutes here left. This is an installation. This is I can't remember the size of this one. This is a small commercial job. You'll see this is one of those that uses those S5 clips. So those S5 clips goes up over those ridges, bolts right on those. There's actually no penetrations in that roof at all, except for on the back side. There's a couple of vents that come up through there that required us to have gaps in the module, so that's why some of them don't line up perfectly. If not, we'd have those things that would be lined up like the top 4 or 5 rows there, how they would be identical. But on this one, the pipe and gall goes over the top, goes down the back side, and goes down into a penetration on the back side. So that one's about a 30-some foot tall roof. Again, take in consideration that's a small commercial job. We had to rent all kinds of equipment to get on that roof, so that's what made that expensive, or that price go up. So somebody also asked me, I don't think we talked about this, what is BOB and BOW? It's not bob and bow, it is black on white and black on black. So here's a couple different modules behind me. We talked earlier about the mill finish and the dark finish. When somebody talks about black on white, this is a black module on a white backsheet. You can see the white backsheet coming through, and that's what shows you the grids. This panel here is black on black, has a black backsheet and a black module, so this actually looks very sleek. A lot of people like that look, and they prefer that one. However, it's a matter of preference. It's a cosmetic look. They're both going to make the same amount of power and so on. Again, the mill finish is probably a little cheaper. The darker black on black is pretty expensive. So hopefully you learned something today with us today. We've got quite a bit of stuff to go over next week. We still didn't get into sizing, which we wanted to today. Do me a favor. We are still looking for questions. We had quite a few coming this week. Keep them coming. Again, reach out to us on the Solar Power Hour on Facebook, or go to our website at thesolarpowerhour.solar. Call us at 888-337-0937. Ask us any question. We'll answer it right on the next show when we come back. So thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Solar Power Hour.
All right, this week we're going to talk about something exciting as usual.
We always have something exciting.
Yes, we do.
At least it's exciting to us.
But this is a question that comes up.
TV, hey, it is Friday night. We're not here. Yes, we pre-recorded once again because WeBeam TV is working over in Tampa with Dancing with the Stars.
62 who knew. I almost said Professional Mortgage Alliance Joe's Bar and Grill, but actually it's our 39th week. 62 who knew.
We're at the wonderful steampunk event at the Verizon Event Center here in 2019. I think it's still August, right? Yeah. Woo! Can't remember
To be able to help businesses to do that part of it. But it's just been a couple years.
Well, and I've taken the business card files from our business cards and made
Entrepreneurs and professionals of Tampa Bay, welcome to your hour for getting the information, the tools, and the connections
Ian
for
Beckles on Radio Influence.
Or you say left hand white, and then they catch the left hand white. What it does, it helps you quick with hand-eye coordination. Yeah.
Well, that's kind
as your super connector. We want to introduce you to our 50-plus show partners. We got over 80 categories of expert contributor advice here on the Consumer Quarterback Show, and we want to.
That's where we disagree, but that's okay.
I said nonviolent.
That's okay.
Because, you know, we're one of the only states that don't give them back their rights. I've got Jamie Limbaugh. He is from the Next Step Image. I love that name because you were telling me earlier.
For the type of republic we actually are is actually very correct. Yet politicians and regular people use these words interchangeably, even though technically they are very different.
If you're an overdoer, overachiever, people pleaser, we tend to neglect ourselves. And even as Sisters Connected here, you know, with Women Unscripted, I know